Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gutterblog. James, a goodly morning to you.
Goodly morning, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm okay. I was out and about last night, gadding about town.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Saw on your Instagram.
Yeah.
He was out.
Yeah, sort of
Sunday night.
office party, sort of a tradition we have, just me and my wife. So we call it the office party. Bit of lunch, nice bottle of wine, and stroll around the city before coming home. It was very nice, very nice.
We always have a little sort of Christmas party as well, but that's tonight for us.
Okay.
But partly on account of our small child, we have it at home. But basically, we just get like in the supermarkets, they have those sort of weird Christmas canapé trays. You know what I mean? So it'll be like
party food stuff.
Yeah. It'll be like a prawn on a stick or like a duck, dumpling. We just buy like a couple of packs of those and eat exclusively party food at home.
Very good.
And watch a Christmas film. So that's tonight.
Well, enjoy in advance. I wish you a very duck, spring roll, prawn on a stick, festive, fun night.
With this prawn on a stick, you are spoiling us.
Imagine biting into a Ferrero Rocher and instead of the chocolate, there was a prawn.
Oh, man. Product recall. But while you were out on the town, I was catching up on Everton versus Arsenal because very unusually for me, I did not watch this game live. And actually, so it was I went to see my friend in a play on Saturday night. It was his birthday that night as well, so it was sort of like a social thing, and I had it in the diary for ages. And I came out of the play at the interval. Mm-hmm. It's called Dracapella, by the way. It's on in Finsbury Park. It's an a cappella musical of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Dracapella, that's good. I like that.
It's one of those where you feel like they started with the title and work backwards from there. But it's on until January 15th, I believe. It's very funny. Go and see it. But I came out of the interval and I had like a couple of missed calls from my editor, my big boss at The Athletic.
Not me.
No, not from you. My other big boss. And probably I don't know if I should be admitting this publicly, but anyway. And then I sort of went on my messaging app and there were loads of messages to the effect of like, what are you thinking so far? What do you think your on the whistle piece is going to be? A point on Gyokeres' penalty could be good, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it turned out I was supposed to be watching the game and working. and I was like, I had to reply and be like,
uh-oh.
I'm at Dracapella. Do you want a par on Dracapella? I can give you a pretty good review of this a cappella musical of Bram Stoker's Dracula, if that's what you'd like for The Athletic.
Turns out,
imagine you log on to The Athletic post game, and it's like on the whistle briefing from Goodison Park, Everton versus Arsenal. It's like I've long thought that Bram Stoker's Dracula would benefit from an a cappella adaptation.
Yeah, the song between Mina and Lucy was really, really very well executed. As for
out of 10.
Yeah, as for Reinfeld's rap, not sure about that one.
So there you go. So I had somehow misread a rota, imagined a rota. It's quite unlike me. I'm often late, but I rarely just don't show entirely.
That's very true. I can.
You can attest to that.
I certainly can.
I will be there, not necessarily when I've said, but in the environ. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah, that was pretty bad. I've never done that before, and I hope I don't do it again. But I dealt with it the only way I knew how, which was to say, sorry, I'm at Dracapella and going out and getting very drunk.
I mean, honesty is the best policy, I think, in those circumstances. It really is. Aside from that, though, I do think it's kind of interesting that you watched it post hoc.
I do too, man.
Because
I think it was a very different experience.
Yeah, because, I certainly experienced it one way, and you obviously knew what the score was and watched the game in the full knowledge that Arsenal had won. So, look, it does strip out any of the potential jeopardy that takes place during the 90 minutes. But I am quite curious as to your thoughts on a performance which, I think has not divided people, but I think there is quite a variation or a variance in terms of how people felt about this. Some people were quite anxious. Other people thought we played really well and that the scoreline didn't quite reflect that. And I think that's sort of where I am in the cold light of day. But I will say that during the game, I had rising levels of anxiety, which I don't think is unreasonable either.
No. I'll confess as well that I did too, and there were some sort of furtive glances at my phone while Van Helsing was, singing about his need to kill Dracula. So I totally get that, and obviously, I think the problem with the game, or the reason it's created that response, is because after Wolves, I think there was a real desire for Arsenal to win in a kind of wholly convincing, stress-free manner.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, and I can imagine that watching it in live, in the course of the 90 minutes, that was sort of not your experience.
No, I mean, I do think that we were better than we were against Wolves, and I also think Everton are a more difficult team to play against than Wolves. And they're at home, and it's a tough place to go, and we've experienced that in the past. But I sort of, was in midway through that second half, and we're 1-0 up, and Trossard hits the post, and then Zubimendi hits the post. And Everton had a little spell, which I'll circle back around to, and the game looked to me like it was taking on a very similar aspect to Wolves in that 15 minutes to go, 20 minutes to go. Arsenal are sitting back. We dealt with it well, and I do want to come back to that because I think it is quite interesting. But I could not experience those last 20 minutes without thinking about Sunderland away, without thinking about Aston Villa away, without thinking about Wolves last week. People were saying, Everton didn't even have a shot on target. But neither did Wolves until they scored in the 92nd, 93rd minute, Yeah. So what it was for me was I could see that we were the better team, I think, on the night. We made the best chances for sure. I think, we probably should have scored at least one of those shots that hit the post, and that gives the game a different complexion. And obviously you relax with a 2-goal scoreline. But while it is only 1 goal, I think 2 things are true. One is that you live on that knife edge where one moment can absolutely scupper your 3 points, right? And the other is it sort of feeds into what I think is an overarching conversation about our attacking prowess, our ability to score goals, more than 1 goal, I think there's been a bit of anxiety about that over the last little while because it's come back to bite us, as we saw in the Villa game, nearly came back to bite us in the Wolves game as well. So the idea, I think, that we haven't been 100% convincing in attack, combined with the sort of recent PTSD and just the general high stakes world that we're living in when it comes to a title race, all of that made me very, very anxious in the last part of the game. So yeah,
as long as it's only 1 goal, it doesn't take much.
That's it.
And it's inevitable. There's going to be a few kind of scares and heart and mouth moments when it's that tight. I must say, is like. There's a lot more security, of course, watching it, knowing the result. And my kind of overriding outtake was maybe because of that sort of added sort of blanket of security, sort of more one of being really delighted that Arsenal were able to win yet another game where I don't think they were entirely convincing. I mean, I find it sort of fascinating and I guess great that we're talking about Wolves and Everton as sort of two games where, you know, we were not at our best, and yet we've got 6 points from it. I mean, of course, I don't think that's sort of a sustainable thing over the course of the season, but I suppose where I'm at is like I'm hoping that this is Arsenal's sticky patch, that this is their period where things aren't quite clicking, they're not firing, and the fact that we're winning in spite of that. There's a lot of there are positives to be derived from that as well as concerns.
Sure, I get that. I think, you know, the next couple of games will be really instructive in that regard. You know, we've 2 home games against, you know, tough opposition, Brighton and then Aston Villa, obviously, who keep winning and who we owe 1-2 after what happened at Villa Park a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, I do recognise that, and I think if you are playing poorly and you're winning, there is some, you know, obvious comfort in that. There is, I think, a wider discussion to be had about how we're playing and maybe why we're not quite at the levels we want to be at. I think there are some reasons for that as well. But it is a comfortable or more comfortable place to discuss those things from when you've got 3 points under your belt again, and you sit top of the table going into Christmas. This completely arbitrary marker of whether or not somebody can be champions or not. You know, don't know why Christmas is different to New Year or is different from the 18-game mark or whatever it is, but it seems to be something that is used in that sense. So why don't we circle back around to first half and talk about team selection. Nothing particularly surprising in the team that Mikel Arteta picked. Calafiori back in at left back, Trossard on the left, and the midfield of Zubimendi, Rice, Odegaard, Gyokeres up front.
Yeah, no surprises there. You know, Calafiori back in at left back. I did sort of have a thought of, I wonder if back in August when Nkapé was signed, or was it even early September? I wonder if Mikel always saw them kind of this way round, you know, that he'd have Calafiori at left back and Nkapé at centre half. I do wonder if he might have envisaged at that point in time it might be the other way. But I think Calafiori's just been so exceptional, really. He's been fantastic at left back this season. That I think it absolutely makes sense to keep him this way round and keep him in that position. Trossard back in, of course. I think that's warranted based on what he's done this season and the little cameo against Wolves. And he kept faith with Gyokeres, I guess. I mean, people asked all week, you know, who should start this, and I think I always felt it would be Gyokeres. And yeah, Mikel's stuck with him on this one.
So, I mean, the first part of the game was pretty scrappy. I think if, you know, neither side was particularly threatening, but then I think Arsenal started to get a grip on the game a little bit. There was a Zubimendi shot. There was a Gyokeres header flicked on. You know, not a simple chance by any means, but a chance delivered to him by Martin Odegaard. And then he wanted a penalty for what he felt was a push in the back. What did you make of that one? I mean, for me, you know, applying my usual rule of how would I feel if it was given up the other end, I didn't think that was a penalty. Yeah,
it was interesting, wasn't it? Because there were a lot more protests over this than there were the actual penalty that followed subsequently. I mean, Arsenal were really adamant that this was a penalty. I don't think this was a penalty. I thought it was good play from Saka and Timber, and that was a real theme on the day. I think their combinations were really, really excellent. Deflected cross from Timber. Gyokeres is trying to get in the end of it. I just think... I think it was one of those where he was so sort of frustrated and disappointed not to have scored that led into the protests. I just think there's not enough contact there really to give a foul.
No, I don't think so. But there was immediately a penalty awarded. Quite how the ref did not see this is beyond me, because like it's not a very subtle piece of play from Jake O'Brien.
Kind of insane, isn't it?
It is completely mad. It's like he had a moment, of madness. Like he was, am I Val Kilmer in Top Gun? I think I will play volleyball with some sweaty men. That's kind of what it looked like. 2 hands above his head. I mean, Calafiori's jump is fantastic as well. He's like some kind of Italian kangaroo, the way he gets off the ground there. And O'Brien puts 2 hands above his head. I think Zubimendi, he claims a penalty there. And Calafiori sort of does, but nobody else really does, which is quite strange given how unsubtle this handball was.
Yeah, Calafiori does for a few seconds, and then I guess appropriately he's very focused on getting back, right? He's suddenly sprinting back towards his own penalty area.
You can sort of lip read him on TV. He says handball. You can see him say that on the TV footage. But it took VAR, obviously, to tell the referee, I think you might have missed something here, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right that the referee should see it. It's odd that he doesn't. But it was slightly odd that so many players in the box missed it as well. It's sort of, because when you watch the replays, I mean, it's the most obvious penalty you'll ever see. And I don't know if it's blind panic on O'Brien's part or just a bit of lacking coordination. It was him at the back post as well with Gyokeres, wasn't it? Moments before. Yeah. Verging on suspicious. That handball. Really, really strange.
Yeah, it's not Lucas Paquetá.
If it was, we'd be asking some serious questions. And so, penalty given. And can I ask, who did you, obviously I knew when I was watching who would take, who did you expect to take it?
I sort of thought, given all the discourse around him, that it might be Gyokeres. I saw Odegaard with the ball, and I didn't think Odegaard was going to take it. Then he handed it to Gyokeres, and the close up on TV before he's about to take it. All I could think of was Riquelme versus Lehmann. He had that look in his face. I was going, oh no, please. Don't be too stressed by this. It was a big, big moment for him. And listen, he made absolutely no mistake with the penalty. It's a great penalty and gave Pickford no chance, really, given the ferocity and the trajectory with which he hit the ball, But it sort of made sense to me that they could give it to Gyokeres in that context, because he is a striker who needed a goal. The penalty, as we saw for Kai Havertz, in that game against Bournemouth,
yeah.
That was a little bit lower stakes, but it was a moment where I think the team or the captain made a decision that, look, we trust this guy to take penalties. It's not like you're giving it to me or you. This is a guy who scored a lot of penalties. Right?
Excuse me?
I'm actually a good penalty taker.
Shots fired.
So I'm a decent penalty taker.
Yeah.
As are you, I remember from the five-a-side tournaments. I've seen you slot them away with your gigantic run.
Well, very much from the Gyokeres school, really, which is, if in doubt, hit it very, very, very hard.
Yes.
And you could understand him having some doubt. I agree, actually. There's a little nervous sort of gulp almost before he takes it. And in front of a baying crowd too, but he really gets so much power in it that keeper can't get anywhere near it. And whatever debates we've had about Gyokeres since he arrived, I think one thing that everybody's clear on is that he can kick the ball very hard into the goal.
Yes.
So yes, I was very, very pleased that he did. I think the players were delighted for him as well. It did, clearly it seemed that a decision had been made to, I say give it to him. I mean, he might be the best penalty taker at the club. He's a very good penalty taker with a very good record. So it's not exactly charity, but I think everyone was aware that he needed a goal and that it could be a big moment for him.
Yeah, for sure. And look, he made no mistake. He scored the goal that won Arsenal the game ultimately,
Yeah.
So look, I I really don't have any issue if Gyokeres takes them or, Saka takes them, even Odegaard to an extent. I think Odegaard would probably be number 3 on my list when it comes to penalties with those two. But listen, you're giving it to a guy who has scored a load of penalties in his career. So it's not like you're putting yourself in any real risk. And I think the benefit for Gyokeres in that moment was, okay, a goal. I need a goal. I need to sort of have some end product after a few games where it hasn't really happened. And yeah, I mean, hopefully that is something that he takes a lot of confidence from. I mean, what else was there in that first half? There was that moment, wasn't there, where late in the half there's an opportunity for Odegaard to play Gyokeres in. And I think this is an interesting one for me as well, because I think it is both a poor pass and a poor run by Gyokeres. I think he goes towards the defender rather than away from the defender, and I think the execution of the pass then from Odegaard is just, you expect better from a player of his caliber and his ability on the ball, I think it's... Yeah, I think both of them could do better there, but I think the onus will fall on Gyokeres, or Odegaard rather, to make that pass more presentable. There was one actually where I think he did have a chance. Saliba actually set him up with a ball through midfield, which he took on. And this is sort of like where I wonder about Gyokeres in the Portuguese league versus Gyokeres in the Premier League. Because it looks to me like that's the sort of chance he thrived on in Portugal. But I think in the Premier League, defenders are better and faster and quicker. Even a Tarkowski, is sort of a level above what he was playing against in Portugal. So you've got to be quicker to get your shot off. And you've also got to move the ball, I think, further away from the defender to prevent them getting the block in. And it feels to me like he's had moments like that since he arrived, where those shooting chances have been there, but he maybe needs to be a bit more, a bit faster to get that shot off, because you will get closed down at this level.
Yeah, there was a good piece on Sky Sports' website last week by Nick Wright, and he used data to illustrate some of the challenges Gyokeres is facing in sort of readapting to playing in England and adapting for the first time really to playing in the Premier League. And one that stood out to me was his dual success rate, which in Portugal I think was above 50%, and I think since he came to Arsenal has been close to 30%. And I think that is probably reflective of the fact that he no longer can kind of bully centre-halves in quite the way he did over in Portugal. I think he's lost some of the physical advantages that he had. As for these two moments, I mean, I thought the pass from Saliba's really, really good. I think then, as you say, I think the centre-half is then just sort of closer to Gyokeres, quicker, stronger than he's perhaps accustomed to. The Odegaard one, I feel like what I want to see there is Odegaard kind of try and commit the defender a bit more. So maybe he has to hold the pass a little longer to try and draw that defender out and then play Gyokeres in. I think as it is, it's just sort of like it ends up being a bit kind of nothing. It ends up sort of falling between two things slightly. But yeah, I mean, an interesting game sort of on the Gyokeres front. I think hopefully that goal is a bit of a monkey off his back and can be a big moment for him. But I think equally it would be, and he's the match winner here.
Yeah.
We owe him 3 points. But equally, I don't think this was a game necessarily in which kind of, in which it clicked perfectly. I don't think... I still think we've got a way to go.
Yeah, I mean, my sort of concern, this is a game where he had 3 shots, 1 shot on target, which was the penalty. But I was looking at the stats and trying to assess the game and trying to sort of, were my eyes telling me something different than the stats are showing, Centre forwards, you don't need your centre forward to be making 100 passes a game. But I think a centre forward that completes just 3 of 5 passes in the hour and a bit that he was on the pitch, while everyone around him is, their pass numbers are way, way higher. Pass volume and pass completion and success rate are way higher. It just sort of says to me that he is still struggling a bit to be on the same wavelength as those around him, and they're struggling a little bit to be on the same wavelength as him, So that's kind of where I was with this performance. I think the penalty was great. I think generally he struggles to link with people in the way that you might like. In December, there's still a way to go, and there's still time for those combinations to start working. And he has been out injured, etc., etc. But that did worry me a little bit, and the sort of the duels or the battles or the one-on-one moments that he has with defenders, he always seems to come off second best in those. And that's a little bit of a worry as well. But look, as you said, hopefully the goal will be the confidence boost that he needs. I don't think he'll start on Tuesday or tomorrow. Tomorrow, what day is it? It's Wednesday. It is tomorrow. On Tuesday.
It is tomorrow. It's Monday today.
I was right the first time.
And the game is tomorrow. So, I imagine he'll be rotated out. Yeah,
we'll talk about that maybe in part 2 because I think I have a question about that. So look, those were maybe moments, for Gyokeres where if he gets a shot off quicker from the Saliba pass, it might be a second goal. If the combination between himself and Odegaard is better, it might be a second goal. The second half, there was a penalty shout for Everton, which I will say worried me in real time.
Was that the one where Saliba sort of kicks through the player?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a pretty tame kick, but it's one of those where you see them given, where the attacker gets the ball just before the defender kicks. It's not enough really to provoke that kind of reaction from Tierno Barry, who I think maybe the histrionics worked against him a little bit. But I will say, as I was sitting there, it just felt like the kind of decision that would go against Arsenal in a tight game. And you have seen penalties like that given.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's unfortunate I can't remember it, but I seem to recall us having a debate about a very similar incident, like at some point last season. I can't even remember if it was kind of for or against us, but I remember somebody making a clearance in that fashion and then sort of kicking through and hitting the player. And definitely, I think there is precedent for seeing penalties awarded for this sort of thing. I'm not going to say it is a penalty. Like I think it would have been pretty harsh. But I can't say I wouldn't have been nervous watching it.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
For sure. I mean, I don't think it should be a penalty, but we've seen those given before against us and maybe 1 or 2 for us. So yeah, I was a little bit worried. And again, that's that sort of 1 goal lead jeopardy, that knife edge that you're on. Because, second goal, not that would make it redundant or just make it less damaging, Anyway, VAR checked and cleared, and that was kind of that from an Everton perspective, really. They didn't threaten a great deal. We had those.
I think that was the moment. I had about 4 text messages from different people at some point in the second half saying something like, nervous or we look rocky or something like that. And having watched the game, I can only imagine that was when they sent those, because I'm not sure there were other major points of tension in the second half. But you tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I don't think there were, because there were what sort of fed into it were the moments where we almost scored again. It was a really, really lovely move from Arsenal to create that chance for Trossard, which, I would expect him to score. I think he should score there. He's got the ability, the quality, the track record. I think he should score there. I know it's close, it comes off the post, but I think that's sort of a bad miss for Trossard. And then the Zubimendi one, not quite as clear cut, I don't think. but it was created by Odegaard. Zubimendi's shot comes off the post. So you've twice hit the post and you're sort of like, oh God, is this going to come back and haunt us? You know, that's the fear that you have with that 1-goal lead. He took off Gyokeres, he put on Gabriel Jesus, and there was a little spell where I think I sent a message to Andrew Allen. I was like, oh, this is like the Wolves game, where Everton had the ball and we decamped to our own half and we sat deep, and I was like, oh, I can't deal with another 15, 20 minutes of this kind of stuff, you know? But what I thought was very interesting then was that only lasted a couple of minutes, and Arsenal basically strangled the life out of the game in those last 15 minutes and the bit of injury time that there was. So I'm curious as to how you viewed that. You know, it must have been quite dull, actually, just sort of watching Arsenal keep the ball in the opposition half, not allow them possession, not allow them into our half, really. And I think that was an interesting aspect of this performance, where it did look as if we were going to sit back and just defend the lead, but by being more proactive, by playing the game higher up the pitch, we just eliminated whatever little threat there was from Everton in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was a lesson learned from Wolves, big lesson learned. Wolves, we really kind of collapsed in on ourselves and allowed them, you know, quite long spells of possession in our half. Here, you're right. I mean, Arsenal, they had those two great chances. Either of those, I think, would have killed the game and really settled the nerves. They didn't go our way. And I think we actually, in light of that, managed this final period pretty well. It's another one where when you're watching, knowing the outcome, you perceive it slightly differently. But I was quite impressed, I think, by the sort of maturity Arsenal showed there, and I felt it was a big improvement on the way we managed our lead against Wolves. And Everton, you have to say, like, for balance, were missing a number of really, really important players for them. You know, Dewsbury Hall, Di, for example. You know, they had a lot to their threat going forward, and I felt that you saw how much they missed them. Really, that they didn't really have enough to hurt us. And our back four, you know, we've had quite makeshift back fours at times, but I thought having Calafiori back in, having Timber back in, having Saliba back in, that all made a difference and gave us that stability that we needed.
Yeah, for sure. And look, as I said, it did feel a bit hairy in those final 15, 20 minutes, just because the lead was not as convincing as you would like it to be, or as it maybe should have been, given some of the chances that we had in that game. But ultimately, you know, it really was about ensuring that we took all 3 points. It is a difficult place to go. There was a big atmosphere, wasn't there? The pyrotechnics and a light show and all that kind of stuff. You know, 8 o'clock Saturday evening, the Saturday before Christmas, so people will have been out and had a few pints. So it was, you know, it was a difficult game, even if Everton were missing some of those players. And I think the way we did deal with those final 15 minutes in the cold light of day, not during the period while the game was live and I was sitting there scratching and getting ever more anxious, you know, it was far, far better than what we saw against Wolves. So that's the improvement. I think the next improvement people want or will be looking to see is, like, can we just be a bit more proactive in the opposition final third? Can we make those chances or make more of those chances? Because if we do, then, you know, games like this don't feel as tight as they were.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that is the next step. And, you know, you cast slightly envious glances at the Etihad, where Man City sweep West Ham aside 3-0, and it looks very calm and controlled and composed. And the margins right now at Arsenal just feel a little bit more tight, but I am impressed by the way that we've sort of managed to manage those margins in our favour. And I think, I'm hoping that if the team can start to click a bit more and we can create a bit of distance between us and our opponents, that'll give us all a bit of a breather and allow our heart rates to to calm down.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is a team, and I know it's when people are looking for that improvement, it's always about the individuals maybe and what can they do. But I think, the way the team has been hit with injuries across this season so far, I mean, I can't escape the feeling that is part of why this team does not look as fluid or fluent or cohesive as you would like. You know what I mean? It's not just attacking injuries, because we've got lots of attacking players at our disposal now, but defensive injuries also have an impact on how you play, or maybe how certain individuals can play. So I think there is something to that. The combinations, like how many times have Odegaard and Gyokeres started together, for example.
True.
True. So we don't have that kind of build-up of rhythm and combinations, the automatisms, whatever you want to call it. Arteta always talks about connections, doesn't he, on the pitch? And there's been so much rotation, which has been necessary, that I think that does play a part. But we're sort of at a point now where we do need to start seeing a bit of an improvement in that sense, right? It's not that we're not scoring goals, but I do feel like there is a sense that maybe goals feel harder to come by than they should be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think you're right to say that injuries have interrupted our momentum at times this season. It's not that they've derailed it, because we've managed to stay on track, but I do think they've made it difficult for us to kind of maintain that fluency. So yeah, it's another. I mean, Mikel Arteta looked very, very happy when that full-time whistle blew. I think he knew these were big points, tough ground to come. I think he probably knew that Arsenal had kind of edged it as well, although they were the better team on the day. And it's kind of a coach's dream, I think, when you've got stuff to work on, stuff to improve, but you got the benefit of 3 points to kind of sit back on. I mean, I say stuff to improve. There is no real time to work on or improve anything, because, the next week or two is just crazy.
It is, starting with a cup game tomorrow night, and then, of course, Brighton at the weekend. So, it's a good place to be, though, top of the table. City, of course, had gone above us earlier in the day. So that was another little bit of something we had to deal with, wasn't it? Just that little bit of added pressure.
To what extent do you think that affected sort of in-game anxiety?
Maybe a bit. I mean, it was felt inevitable, didn't it, that they were going to beat West Ham? So I don't think it was any surprise. But that's what a title race is all about. There are going to be days where you play first and you put a bit of pressure on by extending the lead, and can the opposition react? And then there's going to be games or scenarios like this where all of a sudden you're behind. I think they said it was the first time that Arsenal have not been top of the table since like early October or something like that. So it was only temporary, because we did win and we got the 3 points, but it's all part of what we're going to have to contend with in this title race. So, I mean, I think in the cold light of day, or maybe come May, we'll look back on these games against Wolves and Everton and say, right, 2-1 win, 1-0 win, job done. That's as much as it matters in the grand scheme of things. But, in the midst of the discussion and the sort of fear that surrounds everybody at this moment in time because of the high stakes, they do feel, quite acute, some of the flaws, if you want to call them that, or some of the issues that we're trying to deal with in terms of scoring goals, they feel a bit more acute maybe than they actually are.
Yeah. I think, in recent seasons, we've had spells of a couple of games where we've not quite performed at our level, and it's ultimately cost us the league, right? So I do keep coming back to the fact that to come through these two with 6 points in hand is great. But we will need to be better, particularly for that visit of Aston Villa, which
for sure
is looking like a huge game now.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I think, you can say for sure that there was an improvement on the performance over Wolves, and I think it will need to be better again to beat Brighton, and it will need to be better again if we want to beat Aston Villa. But I'm sure that is something that Mikel Arteta and the players are well aware of. Anything else before we go into part two?
No, I think let's go for it.
Let's go for it. All right, we'll take a little break here. We'll come back with your questions and more in part two right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part two of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social, also at arseblog.com, and on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. And before we just get into the questions, we did say we put the Goodly Morning mugs back on sale. And we did say that we would donate all the proceeds and a bit more to good causes. Most people, I think, bought a mug last year when they were out for the first time. So there wasn't as big a run on the mugs this time around. We generated around €400, which is not small. But I felt like at this time of the year, and given the way things are in the world, that we could do a little more. So we've taken that money and added it to a little pot. And what we did today, Arseblog has donated €5,000 to UNICEF, which helps kids all across the world in very difficult circumstances. We've donated €2,500 to Islington Food Bank. Their work, which is very closely aligned with Arsenal Football Club, by the way, is really, really vital. For families who it's crazy that food banks are a necessity, but they are. And Islington Food Bank is local and does great work. And also €2,500 to Children's Health Ireland for children's hospitals here in Ireland, helping to support sick children and their families. So if you are part of our Patreon community, thank you very much indeed. You help us do things like this and put a bit of good out into the world at Christmas time. And so there you go. That's what we've done, and we thank you for your continued support, which allows us to do things like that. So there you go.
That is fantastic. And if you are a patron, by the way, we've recorded another podcast.
We have
for those guys.
Yeah, when you were in Dublin last week, you came here, sat in the studio. We recorded a festive waffle.
An in-person festive waffle.
Yeah, sitting in the same studio, recording a podcast. And that will be out for everyone either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. We'll release that. It's just a good bit of chat. The Waffle podcast is one that we do for our Patreon members pretty regularly. We talk about anything and everything except Arsenal and except football. So it's all a load of nonsense, but a good bit of fun. So that will be available for our Patreon members at patreon.com/Arseblog. Right. Will I go first?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will.
You will.
Merry
will. Christmas.
Merry fucking Christmas to you. Let me see. I did have a question. Oh, here it is. It's from Nishant at nishantgunner10.bsky.social, who asks, with the game tomorrow, Tuesday, which is the day after Monday and the one before Wednesday, he asks, how many changes would you make for the Palace game, and how many do you expect Arteta to make? Will he give the gift of football to some of his players this Christmas?
Kepa. Will he let Kepa play?
I think so. He should do.
I think he will. I think he probably has to. I saw Kepa was linked with, was it Panathinaikos the other day? And I don't think there's much realistic prospects of that happening right now. But I think, that's probably partly contingent on the fact he's going to get some games. I would expect him to play against Palace. I would expect him to play against Portsmouth as well in January.
Who do you pick up right? I mean, we don't have a lot of defenders available.
No, so I think Miles Lewis-Skelly should and will play at left back.
Do you start Saliba in this game? Because he has been, on the edge a little bit. I think Arteta said a couple of weeks ago, starting him in the Wolves game? Yeah, he said the Wolves game, it was a bit of a risk to start him in that one. He's obviously played 7 days later at Everton. Maybe he's all better, but is it one of those where it's too much of a risk to play him. And if you don't, who do you play? Who's asked about?
Norgard, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, Norgard. Could it be Norgard, Calafiori, Norgard and Capier? Who do you play at right back? He was asked about Marley Salmon in his press conference the other day and spoke quite glowingly of his of his readiness. I mean, is that too much to ask a 16-year-old, or is it a case of, needs must? Timber's played a lot, Saliba's played a lot. We don't have Ben White at this moment in time. Don't have Gabriel, don't have Mosquera, guys who could really slot in across that back line and give you some depth. So it could be a bit mix and match back there, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly as well, I think Arteta kind of unprompted volunteered that he sees Marley as someone who can play centre-half and right-back.
Yeah.
I know he came on at right-back. I have to think if he's got any chance of starting, I think it's more plausible at full-back.
Yes.
Although that's not really his position. It's just kind of football logic, isn't it? That sometimes a young defender, it's not they can hide at full-back, but they can maybe be a bit more protected, I think. Less exposed, shall we say.
I think that's right.
I'm going to say that I don't think Mikel will take that leap. I think he'll go stronger than that. I think he will. We haven't got defenders.
That's the thing, yeah.
I think he'll play Timber. Do I? When's the next game? Brighton. I don't think you can play Timber, can you? I think he'll play Timber, I think he'll play Calafiori, and I think he'll play Norgard. I think he'll play Norgard at centre-half.
Does that then mean that you've got to play maybe a midfield that wouldn't be as natural as it might be? I mean,
what do you think he'll do at the back?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think he might play one of Saliba or Timber to give it a bit of seniority back there. I wouldn't then be surprised to see Norgard in midfield. What do you do in midfield? You've got options. You've got Norgard, you've got Eze, you've got Nwaneri, you've got Marino. I think he'll start Gabriel Jesus up front. I think he'll...
It's Crystal Palace, he must.
Yeah, true. And I think he'll start Nani Madueke on the right, and I think he'll start Martinelli on the left.
Yeah. That means you can play Marino in midfield, potentially.
But do you play Marino do you play like a midfield of Marino as a Nwaneri, or do you need...
Finally, Marino as a DM.
Yeah.
The allegations proven true. I don't know, man. I'm not sure. I kind of feel that you have to play Ethan here. I'm just like, if you're not playing Ethan here, when are you playing it?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I don't know. I think someone's got to play DM, and I don't think it's Marino.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like maybe it's... Zubimendi did the full 90, didn't he? As did Rice.
Yeah. I really don't want to see either of them, which is why maybe you then put somebody more senior at the back and you play Norgard, where that's his natural position, really.
Would you feel? Do you feel that we could get away with Eze, Nwaneri and Norgard as a three, or do you think Marino will be in there?
I think Marino will be in there.
Yeah, so do I. So do I. And I kind of think it should be Ethan in that midfield. I just think Eze's going to get Premier League minutes. But at the moment, Ethan's not really getting those.
Well, neither is Eze, really.
Well...
Is he on the naughty step after the Villa game a little bit?
Maybe a little bit. You can also put Eze into the front three. That is also an option.
Well, you can put Nwaneri on the right as well and play Madueke on the left. We're talking ourselves in nuts here, though, in fairness.
We don't know.
We haven't got a fucking clue.
We haven't got a Scooby-Doo. All right, I'll just name an 11 now.
Okay.
No, Kepa, Lewis Skelly, Calafiori, Timber Salmon, something like that. Norgard, Marino, Nwaneri.
Eze on the left.
Yeah, Madueke, Eze,
Jesus. Okay.
Martinelli as impact sub.
I'll go with that. I
don't know. He's got options everywhere apart from at the back, where I think he's got to fudge it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I saw you. Did you write in the week about the draw and your feelings on the next round?
I did, actually, yeah.
What did you say?
I think it was like, I understand the sort of priority of this season. I think everybody understands the priority of this season. But I also think that winning the EFL Cup and winning the Premier League, they're not incompatible. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I don't think it's an either-or situation. It's going to be 2 legs against Chelsea if we beat Palace, which is, not ideal, but could have been worse maybe. City or Newcastle, maybe a bit more intense, those games.
Yeah, I mean, Palace were quite hard work, weren't they, in the league game?
They looked tired, though, against Leeds, didn't they? They got a spanking against Leeds. So, yeah, I think they'll probably rotate a bit as well, as much as they can. I'm not sure they've got the deepest squad, but they might rotate a bit as well. Listen, it's one of those where I think everyone recognizes that the big prize is the Premier League or the Champions League, right? But I don't think a club that hasn't won a trophy since 2020 can be arrogant enough to say, we don't want to win this one. We don't want to win one of the 4 trophies on offer. I don't think it works like that. I don't think that's how Mikel Arteta's, I was going to say brain, but I don't think that's his outlook either. I think he wants to win every game and wants to win every tournament that we're involved in. So I get it. People find it a bit hard to be enthused by this competition, and there's a worry that it might impede progress in the Premier League, which is, something we've seen in the past. But also, winning a trophy could be really important for this team, even if it is the EFL Cup. And I say even, in inverted commas, because that would be a brilliant season for most other clubs in English football, right? Winning a trophy, So I don't think we can be arrogant enough to say, it doesn't matter. But I recognize it's complicated. So, yeah, I think ultimately, what do the players want? Do they want to win this game and face Chelsea and get to a Wembley final? I think they do. But I do think as well it is important that Mikel Arteta properly rotates as much as possible for this one, because he's got to give some playing time to some of these guys who are not getting enough of it at this moment in time. And, if we get injuries, crazy idea, but if we get injuries to important players, it's more useful to us if some of the guys coming in to replace them have had minutes on the pitch, and some of them really haven't had too much time so far this season.
Yeah, agreed. I've got a question.
Okay.
Kind of based on that. I said I think Ethan sort of needs this game, but there was a question from Jack Abella with reference to January, who said, "Morning, gents. Hypothetically, a £50 million offer comes in for Nwaneri. A, what would you do? B, what do you think the club would do? And C, what do you think Ethan would want to do?"
Well, 50 million offer. What would the club do? I think they'd think very, very strongly about accepting that offer.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I think if they could, I think if they'd probably look for some sort of mitigation in the deal, like some sort of protection against if he was to move, like if
a sell-on clause
or something like that,
or buyback.
Yeah. And they might negotiate on it as well. They might value him. They might point to some other transfer fees and say maybe there's a bit more juice in that lemon. But it would give them something to think very hard about. I think.
What would Ethan do? I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing he wants to play more than he's playing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it really depend on the club.
Yeah,
and the opportunity.
And I think what do I think about it? I would hate to see him go before I feel he's had a real chance. I think what we saw from him last season, the goal scoring, the output that he had, is not normal or not common for a player of his age. And he was 17 for much of that, wasn't he? He was had barely turned 18 only this year, So I do feel like I sort of understand why he hasn't played as much this season. He's still only 18. He's got loads of time to develop. And if he were to go now, I would feel like he hasn't really had the chance to show his talent properly at Arsenal. I tell you, let me what would be interesting? Go on, yeah. Are you talking about a loan, maybe?
Yeah, like if someone came in with a loan, how would you feel about that?
I think that would probably be pretty useful. I
think it's still difficult for the club. Like, in some ways, I think it's easier for the club to let him go when they're getting 50 million quid in, and it sort of really helps out on the accounting. The loan, there's always that worry with a loan of like, you get a couple of injuries and people say, why did you did you do this?
Well, that's true. But also, I think if you're looking at minutes so far this season, I should look these up, but I'm guessing that Ethan's are pretty low. There is a need for him to continue his development, and he's not going to progress as a player if he's sitting on the bench every week and not even getting any minutes in games. So I'm just going to look up.
He's got 446 minutes, so only about half more of football than Christian Norgard at this point.
But what about Premier League versus other minutes? He's 165 minutes in the Premier League. Hasn't started a game in the Premier League. The most minutes he got were in the Nottingham Forest game. I think that was when Odegaard got injured and he came off the bench to replace Odegaard. 72 minutes in that game. One start in the Champions League, which was against Slavia Prague, I think. And in the EFL Cup, he started the games against Port Vale and Brighton. And yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, if he doesn't start the game tomorrow night, when is he going to start?
Yeah. I think if I'm sporting director, if I'm Andrea Berta, I think I am thinking about a loan. And I'm doing it. I'm seeing that as an opportunity. I'm seeing that as what's best for this player's development. Like, can we get him a loan that is going to see his talent develop and potentially explode? Is it the Bundesliga, for example? Is it a good Premier League side? I don't know, but I think, I don't think it needs to be seen as like a disaster or a failure or anything like it. I think it would be brilliant for Ethan, and it could mean that we get a player back in the summer who's more ready to be regularly contributing and to be sort of trusted by this manager.
Sure.
But I do think generally there's going to be a kind of understandable paranoia about allowing any player to go in a season in which you've been so plagued by injuries.
That's true. What about this one from Freddie LJ on the Discord? He says, is the absence of Big Gabby forcing Declan Rice to be more 6 than 8? And are we losing his pressing and offensive actions, thus weakening our attack?
That is an interesting point, in that he does seem to be increasingly more part of that kind of pivot with Zubimendi, it seems to me. And I thought Rice was excellent, by the way.
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of a given. Yeah. I sort of forget to say it some weeks, but I do think he's in brilliant form. Maybe there is an element of a bit of added protection there, particularly in that sort of left channel. Is that what you've observed, or?
I think what's sort of interesting to me is that the midfielders dropping deep to pick the ball up off the centre halves appears to be a bit more pronounced in the last few weeks. I could be wrong. This could be just me, reading the games wrong. But, I saw Odegaard do it, which I don't always want to see him back there. I mean, I think there are times where, he can rotate with Zubimendi, where he can rotate with Declan Rice a little bit. But, certainly Rice dropping between the centre halves has been a feature of our recent play. And I do wonder if there is a knock-on effect to that, particularly when you play against teams who sit deep, But then maybe that's part of trying to pull the other team apart, where you're dropping your midfielders into positions where either the marker goes with him or, I don't know. I feel, though, somebody with a better eye can tell me, though, that is a bit more pronounced over the last number of weeks.
The build-up. Yeah. I think that's right. I think I've noticed that too. I sort of thought, when we had neither Saliba nor Gabriel on the pitch, I sort of saw it as a way of taking the burden off the two centre-halves in build-up. But it seems to have stuck around even though Saliba's back in. So, it's a little tweak, a little evolution to be aware of. Are we missing Rice in the final third? I don't know. I mean, it was his... pass, wasn't it, for Trossard in that move? I thought he did really well there to find Trossard. We've also got his set-piece delivery, which, again, without Gabriel, carries less of a threat. Although I suppose the goal that we get does come off a corner. So
sure.
There you go.
Okay. I had this one.
No. You've got one right there.
Because it comes from John Rokesmith, who says, you mentioned that to win a league, a few players need to hit their absolute ceiling. For me, Rice, Gabriel and Trossard are basically there already. Who else do you think is close to that level, and who needs to get there for Arsenal to go all the way?
Who was his suggestions? Rice,
Gabriel and Trossard.
Well, I would add Timber to that. And I think it's pretty hard to find fault in the performances of David Raya, to be honest with you.
He was very, very good in this game. I thought the way he used his hands was great. He was dominant in the air, claimed the ball very well, relieved the pressure and distributed it very well as well.
Lovely bit of footwork in the first half as well. Didn't do much for the heart rate, but... I mean, that's a decent chunk, right, of players who I would say are kind of in their flow state, Maybe they're players who you would sort of broadly categorise as more defensive than offensive, with the exception of Trossard. Maybe that tells you a bit about where we're at right now. Do we think we will win the league without, at least one or two of Gyokeres, Odegaard, Eze, Saka, I guess you could include.
Saka was also very good, I thought, against Everton.
I thought he was good too. But there does seem to be a bit of commentary around his performances and his contribution, and people saying, when's he going to step up? And we are getting questions about it quite a lot of the time. And I have to say, that's not necessarily a view I align with. I don't think he's playing at a level to be included in this bracket of sort of, your Rices, Gabriels, Timbers, etc. But I don't think he's letting us down either.
No, far from it. I mean, he was instrumental to the Wolves game. But he is certainly somebody who I would say, if Arsenal are going to go the distance, we need him to be something close to his best for a consistent period. And I'd also include Martin Odegaard in that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think we need a bit more from him, although I think his performance against Everton, for many people, will be characterised by that poor pass to Gyokeres. But generally, I thought he had a good game and showed signs that, he's finding a little bit of rhythm in his game again.
Yeah,
and I suppose
he did set Gyokeres up with that sort of clip pass to the back post as well.
And I think as well, not wanting to have the big Gyokeres discussion again, I do think we need a centre forward who scores 15 to 20 Premier League goals. So we need one of them. Like, I don't think it will be Havertz in half a season. I don't think it'll be Jesus in half a season. But we do need a consistent goal scorer in the team to have the best chance of winning the Premier League. I know we spread the goals around a bit, but I also think it's not unreasonable to expect a bit more from the players that we've got there.
Yeah, I think one of those forwards is going to have a good few months. Or Mikel Merino. Mikel Merino's right there. He's right there, guys.
It was funny in the press conference. Arteta was asked about, you've got, or you will have Havertz, you will have Gyokeres, you will have Jesus. Does that mean Mikel Merino as a striker is no longer, a viable option? And he was like, no, he's certainly an option because he scores and has scored on a consistent basis. So he wasn't ruling Mikel Merino out of that equation, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah. Curious to see if and when we do see that again. Here's a question from Charlie J. Goodly morning, boys. A penny for Madueke's thoughts. Do you think it's odd that he's got no league minutes since his double in Bruges? We've hardly been attacking at our fluent best in the last two games. He definitely could have helped.
Well, could he have helped more than Bukayo Saka against Wolves? Not sure.
Yeah,
because Saka took the corner and it was his cross that was headed in for the own goal. So I think in that sense, it was a slightly weird thing to the subs against Wolves, wasn't there? Because we had to use one early on when Ben White got injured. And then, who was it started? It was Martinelli who started. So he brought Trossard on the left. And Saka, as it turned out, was the guy who helped us win the game, albeit through an own goal. But the quality of his delivery from there. And like I said, I think Saka was good against Everton on Saturday. And again, if you were looking for that goal to give you the cushion in the final stages of the game, I would sort of keep Bukayo Saka on, Maybe there was scope to bring Madueke on the left-hand side rather than Martinelli at Goodison Park. I think, like we said, he'll start tomorrow night. But after two goals and one very, very good goal, you do wonder a little bit if you're the player. Hang on a second, I've just done that and now I haven't played at all. Even if there's sort of some logic to it, it must be a difficult thing for the player, and I guess a difficult thing for the manager to make a decision like that about a player who has had a very good game, scored a brilliant goal and scored another goal, and then you have to leave them out. Like, how do you have that conversation? Because, it must be tough.
Yeah, I think it's the reality of competing with Bukayo Saka, like you suggest. I think the unfortunate thing is, in 9 cases out of 10, I think Mikel Arteta has shown he's going to want Saka on the pitch. I think there's interesting questions you can ask about, can Madueke and Saka be on the same pitch? I remember in pre-season we talked a lot about, is Madueke going to be the left winger? Could Saka be used on the left? We've seen it in flashes, but could we see it for longer spells in a game? I don't see why not. I think it might be beneficial to him to sort of switch side here and there. I think he will be disappointed to have not kicked a ball in 2 games, having scored a brace in Belgium. But I guess he'll get his chance against Palace, and Arteta will be hoping it's all sort of fuel for the motivational fire.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there are sort of places up for grabs? If we talk about the attack not really clicking the way we might like, is this a game where, an Eze can come in and stake a claim for a place against Brighton, or Madueke can come in if he scores a couple of goals against Palace? If Jesus scores a couple of goals, does he play his way into the team ahead of Gyokeres?
Great point.
You know, so there is some motivation for these guys. It's not as if, when everyone's fit, it's Saliba and Gabriel, and this season it's been Timber and Calafiori. There's we have the depth, but I think the first choice players are kind of undisputed. Whereas I think in certain aspects of our forward line, if you want to call it that, I think there is still a little bit of uncertainty as to who should be playing. It might be opposition dependent, but all you can do, I suppose, if you're a Madueke or a Jesus, is when you get this chance tomorrow night, is really take it and give the manager something to think about.
Totally. And I think those places, those positions, centre forward, maybe the sort of attacking number 8 position, I think there are places there up for grabs, and big games coming up that all these players will want to be involved in. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see the likes of Madueke, Jesus, Marino, Martinelli, hopefully Ethan, hopefully Eze. I think they've all got a point to make, really.
What about this then from desertgooner33.bsky.social, and he says, does this Arsenal team need freshening up if we're going to go on and win something big? We all know the trusted ones, but does Mikel need to be creative and sprinkle some magic dust to make the attack feel a little less prosaic? Madueke on the right and a new role for Saka, perhaps. And quite interesting as well to note, we talked about defender or midfielders dropping in between the centre halves, and that becoming more noticeable. Is Saka drifting over to the left-hand side something else that's become a bit more noticeable in the last little while? It feels like he's been doing it quite a bit more than he has in previous seasons. It's not like he's spending great chunks of time out there, but you do see him out there more often than you did. And I wonder, is that tactical, deliberate, or is that like Saka being given the license within the game to sort of try and open things up?
I think it is conscious. I think it is probably something that Arteta has talked about and worked on. And I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, you forget when Bukayo Saka broke into the team, it was as an overlapping left back. I mean, more like a left winger at times, but he was so good driving forward on that side and getting to the byline, putting in cutbacks, putting in crosses. He was so dangerous. And I think, that variety of threat he offers, we need to exploit the full range of that. I like this question. I think there is a kind of big kernel of truth in it, which is that I'm not sure. We keep saying our attack's not quite clicking or the balance isn't quite right. And I'm not sure that sort of the front six that we saw on Saturday at Goodison, although I understand the reasons all those players were picked, and probably you'd say it's the strongest selection, my hunch is that there might have to be another ingredient in there for us to really find our groove, whether that's in creative midfield or whether it's at 9 or whether it's in one of the wide positions. I just feel like with all the options at our disposal, there is a bit of an onus on the manager to experiment and find the right formula. And I'm not sure we've quite got it yet. A lot of that could be about the number 9, to be honest with you. And maybe Kai Havertz comes back in and that all changes. Certainly, I think that's what a lot of people are hoping. But yeah, I have a feeling that if we have won the league in May, a bit like what you said about the Wolves game, some big calls will have had to have been made by Mikel Arteta in terms of his selection and the composition of his
how do you see the Havertz thing then? Because look, he's I think we talked about if everybody's fit and available, what would Mikel Arteta's preferred front three be, and we both chose him as the centre forward there.
It's pretty big if at Arsenal these days.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course. But I'm just curious as to what you think about what way it might impact the team or might impact performances, because, like we talked about with Gyokeres and him struggling to be on the wavelength of those around him and others struggling to get on his wavelength, is that something that we have to overcome, or does it go some way maybe to explaining why things aren't quite as fluid as we want them to be in attack, that we're getting used to him, he's getting used to us? Arteta talked about maybe playing more to his strengths, but does he need as well to sort of deliver a bit more in terms of his own performances? Does Havertz sort of take that away because of the familiarity that they have with each other in this team? Or, is it possible that even with Kai Havertz up front, things aren't quite as fluid as we would like? I mean, there's another part of me which thinks, and I don't think it's like quite as mapped out as I'm going to say it, but I do have this sense that this team, or the manager has sort of set up this team to be more effective in the second half of the season, which sounds kind of dumb, because it's like, well, why wouldn't you be as effective as you can possibly be, from August through to December? I don't think it's quite as conscious as that, but I do feel like there is more to come from this team. Not that we're playing within ourselves, but that there are things that this team will do better in the second half of the season than the first. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I hope so. And I think there are things we'll probably need to do better. I think I said that after Wolves. I feel like if we're sitting here in May and we've won the title, I think we'll have needed to see more going forward from this team. I think defensively we're more than good enough. And if we get our players fit, I'm not too worried about that. It's the attacking part of the pitch that, I think we've got a little way to go as yet. But we've got a great foundation to work on that from. The Havertz thing, I mean, my big question with Havertz is like, what sort of state physically is he coming back in?
Yeah, it's nearly a year since he started a game.
That's crazy. Yeah. Because he never started, did he, when he came back in the spring? I mean, obviously he's played friendlies or whatever, but like a competitive game. And how careful with him are they going to have to be? How much are they going to manage his minutes? I think the idea that he just comes back and is available and is starting, within a week, is probably fanciful. So he is very different to Gyokeres stylistically. So again, it's like, does that disrupt the team or does it help the team because they settle back into old patterns? I think we have to bear in mind with Havertz as well that while I think most Arsenal fans had certainly come round to the view that he was an important player and a very good player at that, there were still lots of people looking for an upgrade, looking for something different in that number 9 spot. So,
well, that's what I think that Gyokeres is or should be or hopefully will be, but but I think so for I think for some the idea that Havertz is going to come back and sort of reclaim his throne is a bit almost a backward step in some people's eyes. Not mine, I must say. I think absence makes the heart grow fonder, maybe, and I think without Havertz, I think I've recognised some of what we miss from him. But I do think it's really interesting, and he's got a lot of sort of pieces at his disposal, Arteta, but with attacks, it's so often the chemistry and the combination that unlocks things. Arsene Wenger was really good at that. He understood relationships between players very well, like who to pair with who. And consequently, he was able to rotate his attack sometime, but always maintain a bit of a fluency. I feel like we've not quite unlocked that yet with this group. Maybe Kai will hold the key, but it's a huge burden of expectation to place on a guy who's not played for so long. Sure.
What have I got here? we had questions about Saka on the left. We kind of dealt with that. I mean, I thought this was interesting. Z Bakerman just said, "Where has the swagger gone since the Bayern game?" Rice said they were playing angry at the time, but the boys have been looking a little nervy lately. Is this something Big Gabby can bring when he comes back?
It's a good question. I mean, I think there are always going to be periods in the season where you struggle a bit for form or struggle a bit to play your best football. I mean, we played very, very well against Spurs, very, very well against Bayern. Then what happened? Was it Villa?
We played Villa.
Yeah. I don't think we played badly per se against Villa, to be honest. I don't think it was a bad performance against Villa, but the defeat obviously stings, and I think maybe the manner of that defeat could be part of why the last couple of Premier League games have felt the way they did.
Yeah, how late it was. I mean, that plays into anxieties, doesn't it? When you've got these slender leads and situations where you're holding teams and going deep into games. I think I remember saying after the Bayern game, like, when a team is flying, you never see the regression coming. It just feels like they're going to keep playing at that level indefinitely. And the reality of football is very different. And again, to reference Wenger, he always spoke about confidence. You know, you go down in an elevator, but you go up using the stairs. And I do think it takes some time to regain that. I think the Bayern game, we hoped it was sort of emblematic of a run that would continue, and instead it was kind of the crest of a wave at that particular point in the season. But I think in any successful campaign you're going to have several peaks like that, and you know, maybe performatively we are in a trough right now, but as I said at the top, we're still winning. Still winning.
What have we got? There was a question about why Timber didn't pass to Gyokeres. Seen that one?
Yeah, he went back to Saka, didn't he?
He did go back to Saka, yeah. I mean, I think split-second decision, isn't it?
I thought it was a reasonable decision. I mean, it was a good chance for Saka, though.
I think Saka had more time.
Yeah.
He could have taken a touch there and found the finish, actually. So, look, you can look at it two ways, I guess. Is it a tap-in for Gyokeres? Probably. And just looking at his reaction, not happy that he didn't get that pass.
Really? Yeah. I mean, you have to remind me, I've not sort of studied that. Is it a tap-in for Gyokeres? Is that pass on? It
is on, yeah. I'll send you a screenshot here on WhatsApp.
It does sometimes feel like Julian Timber is sort of on a one-man sabotage mission for Viktor Gyokeres.
Yeah, just as he's about to head one home, there's Timber. Way!
Yeah. He's really good friends with Kai Havertz, and he's just like desperately lunging in to get the ball away from Gyokeres. Over enthusiastic at times. I'm going to watch it back now.
There's
myself.
The screenshot. So, look, yeah, you can see.
Yeah, Saka plays in Timber, and he just goes back to him. I mean, it's a bloody good chance for Saka, I would say. I think Saka will feel he should have done better there.
I think so too. Yeah.
Like, here's the difference, right? Is there a pass? I mean, yeah, there is a pass.
There's two passes nearly. You know, if it's not Gyokeres, it's Trossard as well, you know?
But, yeah.
I mean, listen, I will say this because, you know, I've been a little bit critical of Gyokeres not being on the front foot in a couple of situations like that in the last couple of weeks, right? He's absolutely there for that one.
Yeah, that's Johnny on the spot. That's exactly where you want him to be.
And he's got away. He's created the separation from his marker. If that ball is the right ball across, then I think it's a tap-in for Gyokeres.
Yeah. I do wonder to what extent the sort of Saka-Timber dynamic plays into this. In that, you know, Saka, it's a 1-2, right? Saka gives it to Timber. And I wonder when, like, as soon as Saka plays that pass, I mean, maybe he even calls for it. You know what I mean? Maybe he calls the 1-2. Maybe Timber has it in his mind that, I've worked on this in training with Saka 100 times. He's going to make that little run inside and I'm just going to slip it into him. Like, and to be honest, that relationship was the best thing about our game, I thought, in this one. So I don't want to be too harsh on anyone involved. I think it was a plausible decision from Timber to choose Saka, and I think Saka probably should have scored. He could have put it even on his left foot, I think.
Yeah, I
his
think
body
so.
Out. But as a goal scorer, as Gyokeres, I think you're going to feel a bit breathed there. Yeah.
Well, is it time to go eat a mince pie? Do you think? Is it too early to have a mince pie?
No, never too early. I think we've got to get this out because it's kind of it'll be redundant by the time we play Palace.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
some would say it's redundant before then, but fuck those guys.
Well, let's leave it there then, and let's just take a moment to wish everybody who celebrates Christmas a very, very happy Christmas indeed. Like we said, there will be a Christmas festive waffle for you. There's also going to be an episode of The 30 later over on Patreon, and even a bit of a Palace preview pod with our friend Dan from HLTCO tomorrow. That will be on Patreon too. So it's kind of non-stop. Well, maybe, and I'm not sure yet, but maybe we might even do like some kind of Christmas Eve post-Palace podcast, a short one. So it is non-stop. So thank you as ever for listening. Have a great Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, we send you lots of love and thanks anyway. And thank you for being with us throughout the year and beyond. This arbitrary marker of being top of the table. So for now, folks, take it easy and we will catch you on the next one.
Have a good Christmas, guys. Bye-bye.